Before we get into the content, I wanted to say thanks for everyone who watches. I wanted to give away 5 awesome skins once I hit 100 YouTube subs, and I also want to give away 2 awesome skins once I hit 50 Twitch follows. So if you enjoy the content, subscribe or follow and you'll have a nice little chance to win a skin. Alright, let's get into it. In this video, I'm going to be going over all of the God changes happening in the Cleanliness versus Godliness update that's going live on September 21st. If you're looking for the item changes or any of the small other little changes that are happening to Joust, you can check my other video out that goes over the item changes. I will link that below and also in an annotation card. But if you're here for the God changes, that's what I'm about to get into. So let's just hop right into it. The first God changes happening is Awilix. Summon Suku, these base damage is going to be increased at the later levels. So 80 at the first level, scaling to 300, where before it was 80 scaling to 280. So that burst damage is going to be a little bit more prevalent in the late game. And then the Moonlight Charge, increasing the base damage from 90 to 250. Now it's going from 90 to 290. So again, more impactful in the late game, pretty much the same in the early game. Awilix isn't that popular in Joust specifically, but I do think with some of the walls that are available on the Season 3 Joust map, she is more viable than she was on the Classic map specifically. And into the right comps too, she can just be an absolute menace at all times if the other team doesn't know how to defend against her. Bacchus also getting a change. Belly flop decreasing the cooldown from 16 seconds across the board. Now every time you level that ability, you're going to cut half of a second off the cooldown. I already leveled belly flop because I think it's just the most impactful ability that Bacchus has. So now an additional reward for leveling that is you get that ability up 2 seconds more often at the last level. Similar to Awilix, there's a lot of walls on this Joust map, and I do think Bacchus is a really good pick right now. An underrated pick that doesn't really get banned out, so just keep him in mind. The cooldown on his value flop will only help his viability. Bakasura getting a little couple changes on his Regurgitate, increasing the CC immunity duration from 1 to 1.5 seconds, so a little bit longer where you're not going to be able to CC him, and increasing the cone attack buff duration from 5 seconds to 6 seconds, which is actually a pretty decent little buff for him. An extra second of him attacking in the cone can really mean 2 to almost 3 more attacks if he has enough attack speed. So you play with Baka because of his ult, and now it's going to be a little bit better. I still think he struggles because any form of CC really kind of messes him up pretty badly, but now you have a little bit longer to be CC immune and a little bit longer to get that damage off, so he could end up being pretty decent in Joust. Chaac getting a couple buffs, basic attack speed per level going from 1 to 1.2. We'll have to see if that makes any sort of difference for him. He does have a nice little basic attack chain, so if you hit that I think it's the third one, ton of damage. So if that attack speed and you can hit that more often, that's going to help him a little bit. And Torrent decreasing the cooldown from 13 seconds across the board. Now you're going to shave 1 second off every single time you upgrade that ability. So 9 seconds is actually going to be pretty insane compared to 13 seconds later on in the game. Once that's fully leveled, you're pretty much going to be able to spam that Torrent and heal yourself up. I think Chaac is already good in Joust, another underrated pick. He's countered pretty easily by anti-heal, and if you have any sort of like leap abilities, he has a hard time doing what he wants to do. But if you can lock somebody down and slow them and stick on them, he can do a ton of damage, and if you hit his ultimate in the right moments, you can basically just win a team fight by default because the other team can't do anything for 3 full seconds. So in the right hands, Chaac can be really good, and that Torrent I think it will help him stay more relevant later on in the game because he'll be able to survive where he wasn't able to before. Eset, the Circle of Protection, increasing the damage mitigation in that big giant ultimate circle from 20% to 25%. I do think that Eset is an okay Joust god. if you can hit the Spirit Ball pretty consistently and hit the Silence pretty consistently. And then the ultimate really is great at securing, Bull Demon King or even red buff if you need to. I don't know if there's a better kind of zoning mage ultimate that's also able to secure objectives as effectively as Eset. She still suffers from being fairly immobile and can get locked down pretty easily, but with this change, other teams going to be able to do even less damage in that circle of protection, so might be the little buff that she needs. It's not going to put her top tier by any means, but she could be a nice little pocket pick for when you need a mage that kind of can be that backline artillery type style. Ganesha, Turn of Fate, which is the 1, decreasing the cooldown from 16 seconds across the board. So instead of 16 seconds now at level 1, it's going to be 14 seconds, which is already 2 seconds less cooldown, which is really, really good. And it's going to go down to 12 seconds at level 5 once you level that up. So you're going to have it up 4 seconds more often at level 5. And that is a kind of an underrated ability too. It does a pretty decent amount of damage along with some team utility. So Ganesha with his ultimate, with his low cooldowns that already exist and the ability to silence people, can already be a really great counter pick god in Joust. And now with the ability to do a little bit more damage with Turn of Fate, it should bring him up a little bit on any sort of Joust tier list. Geb, this is probably my favorite change that's happening in this next update. Cataclysm, which is Geb's ult. If you remember it before, it was only percent current health damage, so you could never actually kill somebody with Geb ult. Sure, it did a ton of percentage damage at the end, at 35%, so you could take somebody from 100 to 65% of their health with one single ability. But as the other team goes down in health, that becomes less and less useful. So now that is going to deal base damage in addition to the percent health. So it's going to do 120 at level 1, 720 at level 5, but also do 15% of current health damage at all ranks. So you're still going to have that 15% chunk that's taken out right away off the top on any sort of support or tank gods, which is good already as an initiation tool, but it can also be used to secure kills in certain situations. And I think this, especially at later levels, is going to make it an even better initiation tool, because if you can do 720 damage to any sort of squishy, there's really not that much that the rest of your team has to do to kill whoever you're hitting, especially if you can hit them with the Cataclysm and then into a knock-up. That's going to be pretty much a death sentence for anybody. Where Geb struggles, I think, is still going to be that initiation factor, because you do really need Blink to kind of make those initiations happen effectively. So he's fairly telegraphed, but I think this is actually going to make him really good from an initiation front. I'm going to test him out. I'm sure you're going to see kind of a lot of him once this change comes through. And it's going to be nice to actually be able to kill people with his ult, which you weren't able to do before. And sometimes that just didn't feel good when you had somebody, a sliver of health, and you can't use your ult to actually kill them in any situation. So I'm excited. I'm sure kind of support mains are going to be excited about this change. And like I said, you'll probably see quite a bit of him in Joust to begin with. Hell, a little bug fix on her where it's not providing her increased healing to her allies when in that light stance. So that's going to be a little, technically a buff, because it wasn't increasing healing. Now it will be. And then decreasing the amount of healing Hell provides to herself and allies when fully attuned to light stance from 20 to 10%. So a buff mixed with a little bit of a nerf. This will probably put Hell in the same place that she was already at, which I think she's a very good healer in Joust. Maybe one of the best brawler healers that you can have in Joust. So she'll be a fairly priority pick, I think, still, even with these small little adjustments. Hou Yi, Mark of the Golden Crow, increasing damage for every 10% of missing health from 1 to 5% to 3 to 7%. So that is actually a pretty significant change. If you can consistently land Mark of the Crow and hit what you're needing to hit, that's going to do a ton of damage mixed in with his bounces. That's That's going to be a lot of damage by surprise when you're low health. Obviously, that comes with a risk reward factor because you have to be lower health to get some of those bonuses, but the turn potential in fights is going to be a lot better with this little change. And then the cooldown on it, 18 seconds, pretty insanely long for an ability. I see why it is that way, because you can chunk people completely. But now it's decreasing that cooldown at every level by 1 second. So at level 5, you're going to have that mark of the Golden Crow up 4 seconds more often. I think Hou Yi is already a sneaky good pick in Joust into certain comps, and his ultimate is a really big, giant kind of team fight ultimate, which I prefer to have in Joust specifically. It's just nice to have that to secure objectives, to zone people out, to use defensively if you need to. So I think Hou Yi's a sneaky good pick. Not quite top tier. I would put, as far as hunters go, like maybe Danza, Cupid, Chiron. Those are the ones that I would rather have on my team. But I think Hou Yi's right up there, just barely behind those gods. Horus, updraft, increasing the bonus damage of the Gust attack from 14 to 50 to 20 to 60. So basically at all levels, you're going to be doing more damage with that updraft attack after you hit that. He already does really good damage, so this is going to make him chunk even harder. And then Protector's Surge, increasing the healing from 50 to 50 to 70 to 250. So not as impactful at the later levels, but that early sustain is going to be there for Horus. I do think Horus is a pretty good second tier warrior as well. He's kind of one-dimensional and pretty telegraphed in what he's going to do, but I do think with the new Season 3 Joust map that his ultimate is a lot more useful than it was on the classic map. You can surprise people, you can transport people almost all the way across the map if you need to. So I think Horus will be good, especially having the healing aspect, which is just a nice little bonus in Joust to be able to sustain where the other team can't. Sylvanus also getting a little bit of a minor rework, so his passive is getting completely redone. There are other videos on this that you can find that are pretty good. I'll try to link those in the description as well. But basically, if you hit an ability with Sylvanus, he's going to drop what they call a seed pod. When he picks those seed pods up, it's going to restore 2.5% of his mana and lower his cooldown by 0.25 seconds. Once he reaches level 20, however, it's going to reduce his cooldowns by 1 second. So how this is going to work, if you just think about it, if you hit 3 people with your wisps, right, that's going to drop 3 seeds for you. So if you pick up all 3 of those seeds, that's 3 seconds that is off your cooldowns. Pretty insane. So if you hit wisps, let's say ultimate, that's 6 seconds. You probably already almost have your wisps back up again. So it'll be interesting. I think this is going to be a nice little change for him. His passive before wasn't that useful. I think it was a random root or something like that. But this will I think mobility is where he still struggles in Joust, so it's not going to change that necessarily. But with his healing, with his sustain, sometimes you can make up for that if you have the right comp. So I'm excited to try this guy out, and I think the passive is just going to be overall better for him. The last change is Ullr. Bladed Arrow, increasing that physical power scaling from 70% to 80%. That's going to be a really hard-hitting ability. And then Wheeled Axes and Wheeled Bow, increasing the attack speed on the bow, doubling it at the first level from 5 to 10%. And then you're still getting a little bit more scaling at the later stages, 30% instead of 25%. And on the Axe stance, you're getting increased lifesteal, again, doubling it at level 1 and 5% more at the last level. So Ullr, I do think, can be pretty good in Joust. I think he's one of the harder gods to effectively use, and he's also very telegraphed in what he's trying to do as well. So this definitely will make him more viable, but I still think he's probably in that bottom third of hunters that you want to use in Joust. He does have a ton of 1v1 potential, but if you're playing as a team, you should never really be able to do that in Joust because you're going to be close to your teammates. So it'll help him, but I don't think he's a priority pick by any means. And that is the last of the Cleanliness versus Godliness 8.9 God changes. If you guys learned something, please please subscribe, and follow me on Twitch. I'm still doing a couple giveaways, which you saw at the beginning of the video. But either way, I appreciate you guys stopping by, watching. If there's any other videos that you think you want me to make, or you want to know more about anything specifically, always comment that below, and I'd be happy to make those as well. I know I want everyone to just have more fun and be better in Joust. I think more competition is good for the entire game and the game mode. So thanks again for stopping by. I will talk to you guys next time.